It's another week and another brand new episode here on the Granny Panty podcast. I am your host, RubyLynne. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button. I want to let you know if you want to follow the podcast and everything about it, you can go to thegrannypantypodcast.com. If you'd like to find all things Ruby, you can go to iamrubylynne.com. This week's guest is another returning guest who's near and dear to my heart. He recently announced his retirement from podcasting, and I wanted to take a moment to just really feature him and his work and his inspiration that he has done in this industry. He's personally inspired me over the years, and so I want you to help me welcome Mr. Dick Dangle of Danglin After Dark. Mr. Dangle, it is so good to have you back.
Oh my goodness. This is weird, actually.
Oh,
Lie. Well, first, let me say this. It is an absolute pleasure to speak with you again and to see your beautiful face and to hang out with you. We've been staying in touch privately, but it's nice to see you on camera. And it was a pleasure to hear you on the bonfire with Big J Anderson and Bobby Kelly. I enjoyed that immensely. I hope more opportunities like that present themselves to you because you did well on there. Yeah, you were very good because when I hear a lot of adult perform, boy, I'm really getting off a topic fast.
I know. Let's do it. You know what? This show has, I was just going to say, before we went live, I told you I have no outline. I want this show to really highlight you and kind of send you off into the world. And let's, I want to celebrate you for all the work you've done in the adult industry. So
thank you. I appreciate it.
We're just going to have a nice, conversation. We should have brought our bourbon on the rocks or something, but.
Yes, that'll be for a private show that we'll have.
Oh! Okay, continue.
Oh, yes. So when I hear a lot of adult performers or sex workers go on shows that aren't truly centered around porn and sex work, they don't kind of get the finer points of maybe somebody's sense of humor or the angle that they're taking with the interview. And when I hear people like yourself that got it, you were really tuned into how they were having fun and kind of riffing on what you were saying. You just did such a good job. And I wish more performers would maybe do their research when it comes to non-adult shows and then be kind of understand, because there have been many times where I've heard performers on shows and they don't understand. It's not making fun of them. They're just running with the premise. It's a joke. They're just having fun with it. And they're trying to kind of like, well, no, that's not what I mean. It's fine. You're fine. You're good to go.
That show was a lot of fun. And I know for a fact, because I heard feedback through my publicist, that they weren't expecting me to be so quick-witted and come back. And if you could have been in the studio, Robert Kelly, did not take his eyes off of me. And it was so obvious.
Well, let's be honest.
It was just funny because I do think they might have expected a little different, responses to some of the banter. But yeah, I had a great time. Oh my gosh, it was so much fun.
Yeah, you did a heck of a job for sure. You held the industry in good light being on that show.
Well, thank you. Thank you. So let's turn this around. This show's about you today. And I am so honored that you are doing kind of I feel like your last Danglin After Dark themed podcast show interview. So I appreciate you taking the time because you're a busy guy.
Very busy. And first off, let me say that I am no longer going to be Dick Dangle. I'm going to go by my new name, Dickie Stanicki. See, that's a play on the movie that's out, Ricky Stenicki. I thought it was fun. Boo, that was horrible. But anyway, yeah, it is a bit of a send off, and it's kind of weird. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and say, do you have the panic of, oh, I forgot to release a show,
Yeah.
and oh, I have an interview or something like that. It hasn't been that. It's been more of a, did I forget to do something? And it
Mhm.
becomes a, oh no, okay, it's the show, because after almost 10 years, it tends to become ingrained in your life. So
Yeah, 10 years. Is that what you said?
about 9.5. Yeah.
Wow.
I was
Wow.
I was Dick Dangle before I started the show, when I went to Las Vegas, because I started in August of 2014.
Wow.
When I went to Vegas in January of 2014, I was already putting out the feelers and kind of introducing myself
Mhm.
and coming soon. So I kind of counted as 10 years.
Yeah, you should, because there's a lot of pre-planning that goes into starting a podcast, let me tell you. In the beginning, I had no idea. So I kinda wanna go back to baby Dick Dangle.
Okay.
Let's go back to baby Dick Dangle, and where did you come up with the idea for a podcast? I mean, were you just laying in bed one day and was like, think I'm gonna start interviewing porn stars. Tell me about that very early beginning.
It was such a simple way to start. I was lucky enough that the gentleman that helps me with my web stuff and my
Mhm.
t-shirt designs and things like that, we call him Webman Greg. He was part of a podcast with my first host, the stepfather, and
Right.
he brought me into that. I mean, this would have been, oh my goodness, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I went on just as a trial basis, and the stepfather goes, I think you'll fit the crew. You'll do this well. And after a couple years, I
Mhm.
said, you know what? I got this idea. I came up with the name Dick Dangle, and I like the industry, and I think I'd like to start a show kind of based on sex and porn.
Mhm.
And we recorded a few sample shows, as I recommend anybody wanting to start a podcast to do, so you know what it sounds like.
Yes.
We recorded it, and he said, you know what, I think they sound good as is. So we just started releasing it, and I didn't start interviewing people until I was probably somewhere in the neighborhood of episode 70 or 80.
Oh,
And
wow.
I got in with a gentleman's club around episode 90, where I got so lucky when it came to that. Another
Mhm.
that was helping me with the show, Champagne Dan, said, we got to get you to interview these people. You
Yeah.
know them, you see them at conventions and at clubs. And that helped a lot when it came to going to a club and them
Right.
saying, okay, yeah, we'll let you do interviews. And then the performer would come in. It's like, oh, I know you. And we were comfortable right out of the gate. And when I started doing interviews through the club, that
Mhm.
opened up everything,
I
because
bet.
yeah, my audience grew, and people were saying, do you mind if I recommend you to another performer to do interviews, stuff like that. So it
Yeah.
really worked out well, and 522 episodes
Wow.
later, here we are.
At what point did you go, "Holy crap, like, this is something, like, I've got something here, like, this is a big show, and you're starting to get a big following." How far in were you when you figured that out?
Right now. Um, you know what? I never really felt that, and that has a lot to do with my personality.
Right.
Uh, it was very nice when I would go to a club and I would see a performer, and they would react to me like I am a friend.
Yeah.
And when you see that and you have other people gravitate to you because of it, that makes
Right.
it very special. But I think when I first started to get recognized at conventions and seeing people posting that they've met me, and we're talking 2016, 2017, in that neighborhood, where people are going, I just met Dick Dangle that was awesome. Like, but I'm just me. But that was probably the first moment where I go, this has more traction than I think it does,
Yeah.
which is good and bad at the same time, because I'm at least at that time wasn't doing any kind of filming.
Mhm.
I was growing at a rate where it was difficult to get big companies and big advertisers to kind of jump on board, because
Right.
they thought, or like if they were really big companies, they were like, well, you're still too small. But
Yeah.
as a smaller company, they would say, well, he's too big, he may not want to do it. So it became difficult to kind of feed the machine the
Right.
income it needed to kind of keep this going and continue to spread the brand.
Yeah. I feel your pain on that, actually.
Yeah, most podcasters do, for sure.
I'm like I feel like I'm the queen of rejection.
Oh, when we get into things later, as I'm sure we will, we'll definitely talk about that. But we'll talk about all the fun, good stuff now.
Yeah, let's talk about all the great things about podcasting first.
I'll get into the conspiracy theories and how the government's putting microchips in your chicken nuggets, and all that
That's
stuff.
right. That's right. How many people did you interview over that 10 years? Did you keep a list?
At one point, I was keeping a list, and once I got north of about 230 people, I like, okay, I get it. Yeah, it was part of my OCD, but it became
Mhm.
that where I almost felt like I was patting myself on the back. I'm like, just do it. It's fine.
Right. Right.
So more than 230, because I would do so many of my gauntlet 10 question interviews
Mhm.
at conventions,
Right.
that I was just interviewing people just so rapid fire when the
Mhm.
convention was hitting.
Yeah, because I was thinking about with your podcast, you could have 5 different people on in one show,
Right.
from Exotica or something.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, there were conventions I was interviewing 20 people or more over a weekend, and some would be long form, some would just be the gauntlet. So you're talking
Mhm.
7 to 15 minutes. Sometimes I'm a talker, so that would get long sometimes. But yeah, I talked to a lot of people.
Yeah. I'm quite a chatter too. I always tell my guests, I try to keep this to 30 minutes and like 43 minutes in, I'm like, "Oh, I better wrap this up because I don't personally like an hour, 2-hour podcast to listen to." But
Well, this is going to be a three-parter, baby.
there you go. Of
A lot of
course. So tell me about your top 3 interviews that really stick out in your mind as just they had some aspect of that interview that just either blew you away or just like your 3 best ones. And I know it's hard sometimes to narrow that down because then you feel like you're saying, well, the other 700 people weren't as good. But sometimes you do a podcast and you're just like, wow, like that blew me away, the information or
Oh, that's really hard to say, because there were so many people that I ended up, like I said, just becoming friends with,
right.
that looking back on it, like I really haven't had the opportunity to look back on this show yet. It's
Mhm.
still really, because I've been so busy in my regular life.
Mhm.
The the time hasn't happened where I sit down and I take a breath and I say, "Oh, wow, did I have a show?"
Yeah.
Uh, and I know that time will come in due time, but I mean, Kenna James has always been such an amazing person,
Mhm.
and she would actually come to the studio, which those people I always hold in very high regard,
Right.
because they trusted me to pick them up, bring them here, take them back, maybe get dinner in between. So that those people are always very important to me. But Kenna James is definitely one of them. Featured dancer, Angela Summers, one of the sweetest people that you will ever meet on this planet. And we always had such a good rapport and always had a lot of fun talking. it's always interesting to look back on the people that at the time they were on top of the game, but now
Mhm.
maybe their name has changed, we'll say,
Right.
in the industry. But kind of going back to being at the club for those first
Mhm.
6 months, I mean, I interviewed Bonnie Rotten, Romy
Oh,
Rain, and
how cool.
just the elites. And if there was a point where I almost felt overwhelmed because it was like, what am I doing here? I know these people, I'm connecting with these people, but I don't belong here. And people like Romy Range, I would definitely put her on the
Romy
list.
Rain, I just had the pleasure of meeting her when I was in New York City at the end or, in February.
Oh, very nice. She is amazing. Just
Yes,
absolutely
agreed.
amazing. And with me, because I had known her for so long and I'd seen her at the clubs, just the time and energy that she gave me was awesome. Just
Yeah.
absolutely. So she is definitely on that list. But what I can say when it comes to interviews and kind of using that 7 year, we'll say, 7 years of me doing
Mhm.
interviews, I mean, I could count on one hand, probably less than that, the amount of interviews where I went, okay, that's not good, or I just can't air that.
You
So,
must have known what my next question was.
a
My question was, have you ever done an interview and afterwards said, "Hell no, I am not putting that out?"
couple times, yes.
Yeah.
Usually, what that entailed was people not being in a great place in their life.
Yeah.
And they may have been under the influence, we'll
Oh,
say.
gotcha.
And some of them I was able to edit
Yeah.
and make sound good. And there were a couple people that I interviewed and I just said, I can't.
Yeah.
And I did under those circumstances, I actually reached out to them and I said, listen, I don't think this is going to hold you in the best light. I don't
Right.
your reputation to be injured by this. So I'm just not going to air it. And there were two people that happened with. One ended up becoming a great friend in the industry.
That's
So
cool.
ended up working out. Yeah. It's another really interesting thing about being in the industry so long is seeing the people who I met and they were kind of popular and
Mhm.
then it took off. And it's amazing because when you have those people like a Romy Rain or a Kendra Sunderland who
Yes.
who were just massive in the industry and they recognize you and they yell out your name. Kenzie Taylor is another one
Yeah.
where, it makes you feel so good when they do that. Yeah. But
That
yeah,
is very cool.
amazing to watch those people just I remember like I remember in 2008, my first ever convention, meeting Sasha Grey. She was signing for Evil Angel and
Wow.
I would imagine at that point she was fairly new to the industry. She had no line and walked up, met her, just had a
Mhm.
really nice interaction with her. 2 years later at AVN, and her line was over 2 hours long. It
Wow.
was just outrageous. And another one, Riley Reed. I was lucky enough
Yeah.
to meet her early on and see her featured dance in Pittsburgh at a club, and where her rocket is just kept going. It was unreal to see how popular she became.
That's so cool. It's kinda like when you, go to school or grow up with somebody and then they become pretty famous, and you knew them before. I love that. I knew them back when.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. And it's funny to see it now because like there are times where I go through like old pictures or my DVD
Yeah.
collection and I look and I was like, "Oh, she was so, naive,
Right.
not either wrong, but just so inexperienced in this industry and now she's running it." It's crazy to see.
I have another probably awkward question. It's all these things that pop into my head. Have you ever interviewed somebody and then they became involved in just some insane drama, awful thing that you've considered like, do I want to pull that episode?
Yeah. In a split second, yes, but then in a split second, no.
No, yeah.
Because what would end up happening is someone would have something come out,
Mhm.
and sometimes it's maybe something that was, say, posted on social media,
Oh, right. It's always social media.
always social media, or they say something in an interview, and you know what they're going for, but
Mhm.
it's just not articulated well,
Right.
and everyone attacks.
Oh, yeah. Cancel culture. Cancel culture.
Yes. And when that happens, when it comes to that stuff, I don't really care. But the things like, say it is truly egregious behavior,
Yeah.
I had that happen not all that long ago. And this person was being interviewed by multiple podcasts. And when it happened, everyone said, I'm pulling it. I am not associating myself with this. And there was a part of me that went, should I do that? And
Right.
then I said, no, because what I want people to learn from listening to it is maybe the wordage and the verbiage that they are using, that they can go, oh, I never thought that how they're saying that
Right.
is troublesome, and
Mhm.
maybe a red flag to behavior or speech that I should be looking for later. So I haven't taken a single interview down.
That's cool. Me neither so far.
Yeah. Yeah, fingers crossed.
That's right, that's right. If you could be remembered for one thing in this industry, what would you like that to be?
I think just being caring. It is so difficult to be someone who I don't know if I want to say it that way, someone who truly cares, but I do,
Yeah,
especially when it comes to the adult industry where trust isn't given freely. And
right.
to be someone that was trusted and cared and was an ally and a supporter of
Mhm.
the industry is how I would like to be remembered. I don't, uh, people may not care for me or my show or my sense of humor or however that works. You're not going to make everybody happy.
Right,
But if at the very least they take out of it is, well, at least we know he cared. That's all I
right,
truly ask. If I entertained people, I hope I did. But at the end of the day, if they go, he was a good guy and he cared. That's all I can really ask about anything when it comes to just kind of life in general. Looking back on things, if people go,
yeah.
that's the type of guy we need in whatever given situation or occupation, that's perfect.
Well, I can tell you your reputation is impeccable.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
I remember the first time, I met you, which was Exotica of 2021. So in New Jersey.
Yes.
So that was the first time I met you, and of course, I was, fangirling you with all that ginger hair. I'm not gonna lie about that. But you were so fun and nice and bubbly. You have a good energy. So
Mhm.
that is for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And that's something, as you know, doing conventions, you are yourself, but at the same time, you kind of ramp it up a little bit. You kind of want to
Oh,
show
yeah.
the side of yourself. So typically, I'm not nearly as animated as I am when it comes to being on the show
Yeah.
or at conventions. So I always worry if I'm too much for people to deal with in that time. So I'm glad you said that, because there are times where I think to myself, what are you doing? Slow down. You're fine. So
I
thank you.
get that, as a performer doing conventions, yeah, I mean, y
Yes.
if you're having a bad day, like, no one should know that, so you do feel like you're on stage the whole time, and I know after I come home from a convention, it takes me a week to recover.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, especially when, like, at least I don't want to put it this way. At least with a performer, you're kind of in one spot.
Yes.
When you are someone that works in media, you're everywhere. You're
Yeah.
walking miles upon miles with equipment and whatever else you have. By the third day, my calves are smoked and I don't want to talk to anybody.
I don't blame you. That is exhausting, plus the fact that it's always on concrete. I mean,
Yes.
you're standing on concrete all day.
I had a very special pair of athletic shoes that I only
Mhm.
wore at events because they were perfect for having to walk on cement all day.
Yeah.
So I got lucky finding those. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's
good.
so tough.
Good, good. What do you think's the most important lesson you learned from hosting this, show for all this time, and what do you think you learned?
I definitely learned patience. I learned how to read better. If you may not realize that, listening to me, especially now, but I became very good at reading print, where I was reading a lot of articles for the show, and I got better at just being able to read almost like a teleprompter, just being able to
Right.
through an article. And I also learned, I think my biggest takeaway, and it definitely is good advice for podcasters, don't take anything personally,
Oh, yeah.
because everybody is going through their own thing. And, I've had people that canceled so many times. And
Ugh.
it was just like, well, what are you going to do? You go through the setup. I have my interview questions.
Right.
And it was just one of those, well, what are you going to do? It's not like you think to yourself, what, they don't like me and this, that, and
Right.
the other. It's just, it has nothing to do with it. It's just kind of how life works. It makes you appreciate the people that are in a better place and go through with the interview, and it's fun and
Right.
professional. But yeah, in the beginning, I probably thought a little bit too much about myself and how I was presenting myself and
Yeah.
I was receiving. But towards the end, and it does come with just life experience as much as podcast experience, I just got to the point where it's like, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
So
Like, screw it, right?
yeah, exactly. It wasn't worth my energy to be angry at it because I
Yeah.
had control in it. What are you going to do? Somebody else. So
You can't please everybody, and I mean, I've learned that personally as a performer, like, reaching out to people that I might wanna shoot with, and,
yes.
maybe they're for some reason, they don't think we're a good fit, and definitely not taking that personal because probably it wouldn't be that great of a scene either if there wasn't some kinda chemistry or something there.
Yeah, that is very true. And that is probably, at least for a podcaster,
Mhm.
the the advice I would give performers, because you will see on social media someone saying, "Oh, I would love to do podcast interviews. I'd love to do more podcast interviews. Who should I go with? Or if you have a podcast, let me know."
Yeah.
And you reach out to them, say, "Hey, I would love to interview you." And then they ask very important questions, but it may not be done very delicately. And that's probably something else I learned, is just kind of being delicate with how you present yourself. Because what usually ends up happening is, I would love, as Dick Dangle, to interview you for the show. And they say, okay, give me some of the parameters of your show, which that I appreciate. For me, it's audio only, it's pre-recorded, go through that. And then they say, well, what are your numbers like?
Yeah.
And I get that, but at the same time, I don't. because yes, you want your target audience to be large, but at the same time, being on even smaller podcasts,
Mhm.
it gives you an opportunity to get better at doing podcast interviews.
Mhm.
And it still gives you the opportunity to grow your audience because you're now reaching in a different direction than you may normally. And, with my show, I was getting thousands of listens per episode.
It's amazing.
Even if you get 5% of that, you are still going to get some, we'll say 25, 50, who knows,
Yeah.
fans out of it that are willing to pay money to see you do what you do. That's not small potatoes. So,
Right.
and that's how you grow. And when it kind of goes back to taking things personally, it is that, well, what has happened fairly recently, we'll say, is someone reached out. I reached out. We had a little conversation going. I talked about how my listenership is,
Mhm.
and poof, it was gone. And it was one of those, well, at least tell me that,
Right.
you know what, maybe this isn't a right fit for you. However you want to articulate it, I'd be fine with that. But just to disappear was like, oh, okay, so that's your thing. I'm not going to take it personally, but
Right.
be more professional.
Yeah, professionalism and courtesy really has nothing to do with, with personal opinions or, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
That's just a human thing that you should do.
Yeah, for sure.
I struggle more with people recommending people that they want me to interview, yet I don't feel like that person fits the uh genre, or that kind of, that, like, it might not be a good fit for the podcast, and so that I struggle with the opposite thing.
Yeah, well, I get a lot of people, as I said before, where they go, "Oh, I would love to have you interview my friend, this performer."
Yep.
And okay, that's fine. I will go through kind of the beginning stages of setting up an interview, doing a little bit of research, and sometimes I'll see something where I go, that social media post did not do your reputation any
You
justice.
didn't do you any favors there.
And when I reach out, and then it's just a difficult time trying to get a hold of them to even begin the process. It was like, I'll be here when they're ready.
Right, right, right.
Just let it go.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you.
The advice I could give everybody is a lot.
I love that. I love that. Um, what's the craziest thing that's happened on an interview? Tell me about a time where it didn't go great, and how did you recover the interview, or somebody said something really, I mean, you could edit that out, but I'm thinking more like something just, the crap hit the wall during this interview. Did you ever have anything like that?
Not typically. When I did interviews at the clubs, there was always a time, because with the one club, I started at Blush, which became Rick's Cabaret
Okay.
in town Pittsburgh. I did interviews separately for both of them. And then I also did some for cheerleaders out of Pittsburgh. And they would put you in a champagne room, or, an office kind of way, so the audio would be fairly decent. And there were times where I would be in the middle of an interview, and we're having kind of this, I don't want to say an intense conversation, but we're really connecting on what we're saying. And the door opens up, and it's like two new dancers bringing in a patron that they're going to do a champagne room with. And it's just that really awkward pause of, okay, well, you guys go head out. And
Yeah, that's right.
but yeah, not a whole lot. I had more interesting things happen, because to show my support for the industry, if someone feature dancing, I did my best to stay and watch the feature show and get a picture with them afterwards. And sometimes I would get a dance from one of the house dancers, or something would happen on stage. That was stuff that, when people go, what will you remember most about, this journey of, because I started going to clubs when I heard about feature dancers in
Yeah.
2010. So, 14 years of going to clubs seeing feature dancers, those are the memories that will live with me forever, because some of the best, I tell people the stories and they just go, how did that happen? I'm like, I don't know, but it was awesome and it happened.
That's so cool. Those are great memories, though.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, just yeah. See, now I'm starting to reminisce, and just all the
Yeah.
the stuff
You
that
get
happened.
that little warm, fuzzy feeling.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, just like I remember, especially in the beginning, I always wanted to be very professional. When I did an interview in a club,
Mhm.
I always dressed very nice, and my questions may have been fun, but they were always presented very professionally, and my
Right.
pictures were always very professional. And I remember the first time that someone did something that I didn't realize, and I was getting a picture with Nikki Benz, who I adore, and she did bunny ears behind me, and I had no idea she did it until like later the next day, when I looked at my phone to see the picture, and I'm like, "Oh, that is adorable!" And that was one of those moments. It was just like, "All right, I think I'm getting this now. I think they're letting me in now."
That's so cool. Very cool. Well, we've talked about the past a lot. Let's talk about the future. What's next for Mr. Dick Dangle?
Oh, that is such a good question.
You you always say that, I think, when it's like, "Oh god, how am I gonna answer this?"
Well, because it's something I very recently thought about.
Yeah.
When you get to a certain point in your life, things that had priority may not anymore.
Mhm.
Priorities change.
Sure.
And one thing that I realized after ending the show was, since I was 15, I worked, and I've worked hard my entire life. To many people's dismay, my podcast made very little money. I'll say that.
I
Uh,
believe it because 'cause I'm in the podcasting.
I was talking to someone recently, and they had. We'll get back to my thing, I promise.
Yes.
But I had someone talk about, someone reached out to them about their podcast, and they said, "Well, at least you're making like livable money on your podcast." And we both just kind of burst into mad laughter, because in the 9.5 years that I had my show,
Mhm.
I made right around $1,000. So
Wow.
that's next to nothing.
Right.
And kind of getting to something I said, we'll talk about it later. I have a list of about 3 dozen companies that I reached out to, and either got at least a no thank you. Some people ghosted me. Some people were upset that I, as an adult podcaster, reached out to them because their product had nothing to do with the adult community, just to turn around and become uh, in with the adult community, because they had big names that they could use as brand ambassadors.
Right.
Both
Right.
name, very upset at that company. But anyway, but a lot of people think that doing a podcast automatically, it's like a money printing machine, and it's just not, and
No.
you think of about $1,000, that might cover a convention weekend when it comes to flight
Maybe.
or driving, hotel, supplies,
Mhm.
just the stuff that you need to kind of do a weekend right. So,
Right.
I would average 2 to 4 conventions a year. So I think my company has taken a bit of a loss.
Yeah.
I was pumping a lot of, my personal, just day job money into it. And
Right.
that was I don't want to say that was one of the reasons that I stopped the show, but with the cost of everything rising so rapidly, especially hotel rooms,
Oh,
crap
yeah.
hotel rooms, it was just, I think I might be done.
Yeah. I
Um,
completely understand that.
yeah,
I think in the let's see, I'm a year and a few months, I've made $11 and that was from Spotify streams, but then they raised their uh you had to have now like 100 brand new listeners to Spotify or, to your podcast to even get paid now.
yeah.
So, yeah.
There were a lot. If I have one minor regret, it is not chasing that stuff a little bit more, because
Yeah.
I tend to be a very low key, humble guy when it comes to business. I wanted people to approach me. I wanted to build a community,
Yeah.
but that also hurt my growth.
Mhm.
And then you always have the people that are like, well, then just do this, that, and the other. But that's more time, effort, and money. So
Yeah.
it kind of came to a crossroad. But to get back to your question, the free time that I had from my day job was taken up by the podcast.
Right.
Very recently, literally within the past few days, I thought to myself, what do I do? Like what could, because I kind of put all my hobbies on the back shelf. I
Right.
still enjoy music and going to
Mhm.
concerts, but everything else kind of got put on the back burner. And
Mhm.
now I'm at the point of maybe doing a little bit of reinvention.
Cool.
And yeah, we'll see what happens. And also, I've had a number of people that went, because I've taken time off of the podcast in the past,
Uh-huh.
where they said, "You'll be back."
That's
And
what I think too.
well, but then my answer to that is, if someone pays me, I'll be more than happy to come back. But if you think I'm going to work what that averaged out to about $100 a year, if you think I'm going
Right.
to do this show for that, not going to happen.
Right. But I do think you could take the skills that you've learned from having the podcast and maybe get your dream job.
I thought about that as well, and I've had people say that too. Why don't you turn this into maybe, you go back to your civilian name and you go into this direction or that direction. You have the personality for it, so maybe that'll work. Maybe, but right now, being able to take a breath and not have to worry about being on the computer 4 hours a night for most nights in the week trying
Right.
to get things done. Just, I mean, there's been a week where I didn't turn my computer on, and it was kind of
Woohoo.
nice. Yeah, it was nice to not have to kind of feel locked into this situation. So
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Um, but we can still find all your episodes, right? Tell us where we can still listen forever. You haven't pulled them down or anything.
I have not pulled them down, and I just updated. So dickdangle.com, the main website, is going to be up for another year. I just renewed that. So you'll still be able to download the shows, and that I didn't pull anything down from streaming networks that I'm on. So I may not be on all of them, but I'm on Spotify and Google and Apple and stuff like that. So you'll still find me there to listen to the show and maybe go back. But yeah, I think I want to leave them up for a little bit and
Okay.
just see what the response is. That's especially for people like yourself, other podcasts. If there are fans that are hearing this
Mhm.
and they go, "What can we do as fans?" Maybe, hey, if you don't want to pay, if you can't pay, I get it. But as a fan, if you like what somebody's doing,
Right.
let them know. There's
That's right.
always an email, because I have an email, dick@danglinafterdark.com. Like I said, thousands of listens per episode. I had maybe 6 fans that on the
Yeah.
regular would reach out to me. That's not enough. If there's going to be something that's going to sound very egotistical, that's not enough
Yeah.
to feed this. It's not enough to
Right.
keep that part of it motivating for me. Because if
Right.
I don't think anyone's listening, who am I doing it for?
That's right.
Yeah. So I had a couple that actually posted stuff on social media, or they reached out via the email, and
Yeah.
said how much they enjoyed the show and things like that. And that means so much to me, and that means so much to other podcasters,
Yeah,
content
it does.
porn stars. Let them know you care and you're watching or listening. That makes all the difference in the world.
I agree. I agree. Well, I have one last question as we close out the show.
Okay.
You going to keep filming content as an adult performer?
For now, I am stepping away from that as well.
Okay.
I did have someone reach out to me like, "Hey, I might have an opportunity for you," and it was just I can't right now. Let me continue to work on getting myself in a better place, kind of getting my life in a rhythm that may be introduced back into the system again. But for now, yeah, it's definitely going to be a step away. So
Okay.
I
Well, we'll see if I can talk you into a comeback here this
know.
year.
If there's anyone that can, it is you.
Well, I want to thank you. I know, right? I'm like, ooh, I'm getting kind of sweaty in here again. I want to thank you for coming on the show, and I just wanted to spotlight you and your work that you've done. You have been an inspiration to me. I can't even tell you how much. And if it hadn't been for your podcast, I would have never met you.
That is,
So I appreciate everything you've done. I know you do have a huge fan base.
thank you.
So just know that, and you're going to be very, very missed.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You have been an absolute delight. I know we will always remain friends, but meeting you and getting to know you the way I do has been a highlight of the last 10 years. For sure.
Aw, don't make me cry. I don't think I've cried. I might have cried on one podcast when it.
Yeah, well, we're running long here, as I told you we
I
would.
know. I told you it was going to be 30 minutes, and we're at 45. We better shut down. We got to honor this.
That's all right. We can do some. If you ever do a Patreon, we'll just do audio after this.
Okay, sounds good.
All
Thank
right.
you so much again, Dick. I wish you the best, as I know all your fans and listeners do.
Thank you very much. And as always, dangle on.
Dangle on.